In late 2025, images of mass protests in Iran dominated global headlines, signaling the most serious threat to the regime in decades. While the world saw domestic turmoil, Beijing saw a direct threat to its industrial engine, China's refineries. For years, China had relied on a discreet but vital energy partnership with Iran, securing discounted oil that fueled its economic growth. This arrangement, hidden behind complex shipping and non-dollar deals, was a cornerstone of China's strategy to bypass Western-dominated markets. But as unrest disrupted Iranian ports and oil infrastructure, the flow of crude to China faltered, exposing the fragility of this lifeline. Chinese teapot refiners, built on the arbitrage of sanctioned oil, faced immediate crisis as shipments stalled and costs soared. The turmoil in Iran revealed a deeper vulnerability. China's energy security was tied to unstable regimes, making its supply chain dangerously exposed. The events in Iran became a case study in how domestic upheaval in one nation can send shockwaves through the economic core of a global superpower. As China's economy boomed in the 2000s, its leaders faced a dilemma: how to secure enough energy without relying on US-controlled markets. Their answer was bold: partner with sanctioned oil-rich states like Iran and Venezuela, shunned by the West but eager for new buyers. These deals offered China cheap, long-term oil supplies and expanded its geopolitical influence, while providing lifelines to isolated regimes. In Venezuela, China exchanged massive loans for guaranteed oil shipments, locking in supply as Caracas struggled under sanctions. In Iran, Chinese firms became the main buyers, using shadow fleets and covert transfers to keep oil flowing despite international pressure. For nearly 2 decades, this strategy delivers steady, discounted energy, fueling China's rise as the world's factory. The risks, instability and unreliable partners, were seen as manageable, a price worth paying for energy independence. But the assumption that these regimes would remain stable proved dangerously optimistic. As Iran and Venezuela faltered, the cracks in China's energy gamble began to widen. The Iranian protests of 2025 were different: widespread, persistent, and directly targeting the country's oil sector. Strikes and port disruptions choked crude exports, turning a theoretical risk for China into a harsh reality. Chinese customs data and tanker trackers revealed a sharp drop in Iranian oil shipments, exposing the vulnerability of China's supply chain. Independent teapot refineries reliant on cheap Iranian crude were hit hardest, forced to buy pricier alternatives or cut operations. Many teapots slashed output or faced closure as profit margins evaporated. The crisis underscored the hidden costs of China's sanctioned oil strategy. The discount came with the risk of sudden, severe disruption. The events in Iran forced Beijing to confront the reality that its energy lifeline was far less secure than it had believed. The lesson was clear: domestic instability abroad could quickly become an economic shock at home. As China reeled from Iran's turmoil, a bigger blow landed: the sudden fall of Venezuela's Maduro in a US-led operation. A new pro-Western government in Caracas swiftly redirected oil exports to the US and Europe, cutting off China's hard-won supply. Decades of Chinese loans for oil deals were thrown into limbo, with Beijing facing massive financial losses and no leverage over the new regime. The loss of Venezuelan crude and the collapse of repayment contracts marked a catastrophic setback for China's energy and financial strategy. The US intervention showed how quickly Washington could dismantle China's carefully built networks. Unlike Iran's internal unrest, Venezuela's shift was a direct geopolitical defeat, nullifying years of investment overnight. The message was unmistakable: relying on sanctioned regimes carried the risk of total, abrupt disruption. The Venezuelan domino had fallen, and Beijing felt the shock. The US seized on China's vulnerability, launching a new, aggressive campaign to enforce sanctions on Iran and Russia. Washington targeted not just the sanctioned states, but the entire logistical web, ships, insurers, and ports that enabled oil to reach China. Advanced surveillance and financial forensics exposed the shadow fleet, while diplomatic pressure closed loopholes in transshipment hubs. The cost and risk of moving sanctioned oil soared, as insurers and port authorities feared US penalties. The US strategy was clear: disrupt China's energy supply through economic and legal warfare, not direct confrontation. For Beijing, the discount on sanctioned oil was now outweighed by mounting operational and financial risks. The era of easy sanctions evasion was over. With Iran and Venezuela disrupted, China turned to Russia, the last major sanctioned oil giant still able to deliver. Russian crude, especially the ESPO blend, became central to China's energy mix, seemingly offering stability amid chaos. The partnership was strategic, with pipelines and state-controlled fleets bypassing some Western controls. But the risks remained. Most Russian oil still traveled by sea, vulnerable to sanctions enforcement and military tensions. The G7 price cap and U.S. targeting of tankers created new headaches for Chinese buyers. As China's reliance on Russian oil grew, so did its exposure to secondary sanctions and geopolitical friction. The Russian pivot was not a safe haven, it simply traded one set of risks for another. China's energy security was now entangled in the front lines of global confrontation. China's shadow fleet, aging tankers run by shell companies, was the backbone of its sanctioned oil imports. These ships used deceptive tactics to evade detection, but by late 2025, US and allied surveillance made evasion nearly impossible. Advanced tracking and machine learning exposed illicit transfers, leading to sanctions on ships, owners, and insurers. Insurance costs soared, ports turned away suspect vessels, and the risk of catastrophic accidents grew. The logistical nightmare for Chinese refiners intensified as delays and legal risks eroded the price advantage. The shadow fleet, once an asset, became a liability, proof that technology and financial pressure could police the high seas. China's clandestine supply chain was under siege. The supply shocks hit China's refining sector hardest, especially the independent teapots built on cheap, sanctioned crude. As flows dried up and costs rose, many teapots slashed production or went bankrupt, triggering a wave of consolidation. Even state giants like Sinopec and PetroChina faced compliance headaches and higher costs as Russian oil came under scrutiny. The crisis exposed a technical flaw. Many refineries were configured for heavy, high-sulfur crudes from Iran and Venezuela. Switching to alternative supplies required costly retooling and reduced efficiency. The turmoil revealed that China's dependence was not just financial, but deeply embedded in its industrial infrastructure. The refining sector's vulnerability became a microcosm of China's broader energy dilemma. The era of easy profits from sanctioned oil was over. By early 2026, the convergence of crises forced Beijing to confront the fragility of its two-decade energy gamble. The dream of insulating China from U.S. power through sanctioned oil had collapsed under the weight of instability and enforcement. Immediate pain in the refining sector was matched by a deeper strategic reckoning. China now faces a reluctant pivot back to mainstream Middle Eastern suppliers, accepting higher prices and U.S. influence. The crisis may accelerate China's push into renewables and electric vehicles, seeking long-term energy independence. The unraveling of its strategy exposed the limits of China's global influence and the risks of challenging the existing order. The no limits partnership with Russia will be tested as economic risks mount. China's oil lifeline story is a lesson in the unforgiving realities of global energy politics. There are no shortcuts to true security.